Trade Union Federation Cosatu has a new leadership, but questions over the relevance of the largest union federation do continue. Its re-elected president, Zingiswa Losi, has promised to rebuild and strengthen Cosatu in the face of declining support. Now, for more on this just ended 14th National Congress and questions over the federation's relevance, I'm joined by Labour Law Specialist Michael Bargraim. Michael, a pleasure to have you on the program this evening. If this most recent Cosatu Elective Congress is anything to go by, it clearly exposes that these cracks between the tripartite alliance do exist. I'll take the comments of the re-elected Cosatu President Zingiswa Losi, who's even warned the ANC that the workers' patience is running thin. Let's start there. What is at the heart of this strained relationship?
Well, it's been a long time coming, but the reality is the last 4 years have been absolutely disastrous for the trade union movement. You would remember 4 years ago they signed a 3-year wage agreement, which the first year they paid, the second year they paid, and the third year the government, under the leadership of the ANC, then reneged on the agreement, relying on a very obscure clause in the regulations. And they went to court, and the unions lost the court case on the basis that that obscure piece of regulation made the agreement null and void. Now, that's duplicitous. It's basically cheating the trade union movement. We all knew beforehand that the payments that were forthcoming over the 3-year period weren't sustainable. The government didn't have the money, but they agreed because they wanted the voting fodder of the union membership to support the ANC in the elections. And then we see in the third year, after the election, they then reneged on that. And basically you can't trust someone that does that to you. You sit around the table, you have hard negotiations, you shake hands, you sign an agreement, and then they say, sorry, that was we had our thumb crossed behind our back. It doesn't work. So you had that. Then what you have is a situation where the current negotiations were starting to fall apart. You might recall a year ago when the president of South Africa appeared at the union movement at a Cosatu conference, and he was booed off the stage, so much so that he had to be bundled out by the police because they feared for his safety. Now, that's not a relationship that means any good at all. Basically completely broken. And of course now, as you saw what happened, Gwede Mantashe was sent by the ANC to give the message from government to the Cosatu conference, and he was booed off again. Gwede had a little bit more resilience than Ramaphosa in that he refused to go, or they couldn't speak, and he even pitched up the next day and he couldn't speak again. So I think the relationship is broken. The problem is that the leadership of Cosatu are looking to the ANC probably for positions, for ministerial positions, etc., but the workers have been used as cannon fodder. I mean, I can't see any goodness coming out of this at all. And I think the workers have not only realized it, but they've acted on it. I'm with them on this, absolutely with them. And look, the trade union movement is absolutely vital to our economy. They are a vital cog to the economy. They fit into the Constitution, they fit into all our laws, but they've got to get back to do what trade unions are supposed to do,
right,
not play politics.
Interesting point you make about the ANC also relying on the support of the Trade Union Federation, Cosatu. And Zingiswa Losi having said that if the ANC wants to win the 2024 elections, they must listen to the working class. What do you make of these kind of comments and its tone, really?
Yeah, it's a threat. It is a threat. And you know that in these current negotiations, the government has budgeted for a 3% increase for the civil service. The civil service is the core, the backbone of Cosatu's membership. That's where they are. And 3% doesn't suit them. It's not much, it's not a handsome increase. Of course, government do something really weird. They first budget and then they negotiate afterwards. This doesn't make any sense altogether. But they've budgeted and they know they can't afford more than 3%. So what Losi is doing now, cleverly so, she's saying, you want to irritate us? Well, you're not going to get our support. But it's not just the voting support that the ANC relies on. Cosatu gives them also the administrative support. Cosatu's got, I don't know how many offices, 500, 1,000 offices around the country. And they become the backbone then of the ANC's campaign. They have relied almost entirely since the beginning of our democracy. Cosatu has been supporting and basically keeping the ANC together. The ANC has now done it dirty. They're going to carry on doing it dirty. They only need them there for the votes and the administration. Because every Cosatu office becomes an administrative campaign office for the ANC. But now we're seeing this tripartite alliance shaking really badly because even the Communist Party have said, we want to stand alone. We want to put up candidates, which is about time that they put up candidates and they can test what their mettle is instead of hiding under the wings of the ANC. And again, why would you bastardize a trade union movement like this? They've actually completely hobbled the trade union movement, which is unfair. It's wrong. The trade union movement should stand erect with its own spine and its own people. And if they want to put up candidates, they should put up candidates, not rely on being bullied by an ANC.
Back to the events of this week. ANC chairperson Gwede Mantashe did not mince his words when reacting to being booed by the Cosatu delegates on Monday. Mantashe even believes that delegates were immature for not allowing him to speak, but noted that the ANC would try to mend fences with Cosatu, saying that the alliance is very weak at this stage. What considerations, in your opinion, need to be made to help mend this relationship?
Well, I don't think it should be mended. I think the trade union movement is strong enough to stand on its own feet. I personally think that it's not going to be mended. The trust relationship is broken. If you promise someone an increase, you sign it, you bring your best negotiators to the table, and then you break that. When you say to people afterwards as a trade union movement, you better give us the increase or else we won't support you, that's then breaking the trust from the ANC side. To say, well, these people are threatening us. This is not two gangsters. One is a trade union movement and the other one is a political movement. It's not like we in some sort of gang fight in the Wild West in America. And these are two very big and influential bodies in this country busy threatening each other in the open for the public to see. I mean, for Mr. Mantashe or Minister Mantashe to say that it's immature, I think he's wrong. I think the workers were absolutely right. They've been cheated, they've been used, and they're now speaking up. That's what trade unions are supposed to do. They're supposed to speak up. And the trade unions should forget about all this and get back. They wage negotiations. They represent people who have been dismissed. They represent people who are being retrenched. They negotiate for terms and conditions of employment. That's what the workers want, and that's what they're paying for. They're not paying for Cosatu to play politics. But unfortunately, the leadership of Cosatu are always looking for ministerial positions. That's where Ramaphosa comes from. That's where Mantashe comes from. And it's a nice pathway for them. But the man in the street, the woman worker, they get nothing. They go take them out on mass strikes and no one gets a wage during the strikes. But the organizers and the leadership are all earning fat salaries. There's something wrong. We need to get back to the basics again. And that's where trade unions know best, and they represent workers' rights, and they implement rights, and they're strong that way, and we desperately need strong trade unions to stand up to management. We don't need them to stand up to government.
Now, Michael, as we wrap up, Cosatu entered this Congress, and a lot was said ahead of the meeting that it should have started with some kind of introspection and acknowledgement that it is no longer the giant of yesterday. However, it is not alone in this, as most unions globally face the specter of losing members, retrenchments, and the new and different workplaces with their members must adjust to. Give us your observations very quickly in this regard.
Well, quite clearly, they are shrinking. They're still the biggest trade union movement in the country. They represent 2 million workers. They, at the end of the day, are suffering like the rest of the world is suffering because the workforce is shrinking as well. As we move into the fourth industrial revolution, we're going to need less and less workers. So there are problems, but they need to handle those problems properly instead of playing politics. So I believe there's still a long road for the trade unions to not only travel, but to be influential and to actually help the worker, to help the person who is there at the coalface and needs the clout of a trade union behind them. Isn't that why trade unions exist in the first place? If I'm a worker at a factory, I can't go run off and get a lawyer. What I need is the might of a full trade union to stand by me when I'm going through my retrenchment. And unfortunately, in South Africa today, we have 11 million unemployed people looking desperately for jobs. Unions don't represent them. They will never represent them, but at least help out the people that have remained within the trade union movement and remained in the workforce. And those people desperately need help. Lawyers are expensive today. You can't get that sort of help. You only can get it through a trade union. And so I'm encouraging people to join trade unions, but I'm also encouraging unions to get back to help the people instead of helping the leadership. It's just not fair. And of course, at the end of the day, as the workforce shrinks, the unions will shrink as well. But that's the ebb and flow. In 10 years' time, hopefully, our economy will come right. Hopefully, the ANC would have left government, and hopefully, the union will become more powerful once again.
Michael Bargraim there, he's a labor law specialist, helping us make sense of the events that played out at Cosatu's Congress, or elective Congress, the 14th elective Congress this week.